scaling up EOS. There's 100, if not 1,000 books on how to improve every facet of business. And to the frustration of my CEO, I don't think I've ever read one of them. Um, in fact, to be quite honest, this is probably the next book that I'll read, the first book that I'll read in a very long time. And honestly, because I'm really just diving deep into the COO Alliance universe, and I'm just really passionate about what you guys are doing and being part of it.
All right, buckle up for today's episode with Ebert Grobler. He's the COO and co-founder of Ruby Digital, a South African-based company. He's also a COO Alliance member, flying all the way from South Africa to Boston to attend one of our in-person COO Connect events. He's the co-founder and group COO of Ruby Digital. Ebert's all about shaking up the 9-to-5 grind using tech to supercharge how we work and live. With his wife and kids as his rock, he's led global performance marketing powerhouses across the USA, the UK, and South Africa, with 20 years of epic growth and innovation under his belt. He's also delivered jaw-dropping results like 10x revenue spikes and award-winning exits. Since joining Ruby Digital in 2021, he's fueled their rise to global fame, snagging titles like Specialist Internet Marketing Agency of the Year and South Africa's top agency rank. He's also a culture champ and the co-host of the Smart Marketing 2.0 podcast, dishing out smart, game-changing businesses. Also, they run one of the top companies to work for in South Africa. You're going to love this episode. You can watch all of our episodes on our Second in Command podcast YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and share this episode with your friends and coworkers. We'll see you on the inside. So, Ebert, welcome to the Second in Command podcast.
Thanks for having me, Cameron.
Looking forward to this. It's funny, just before we went live, I kind of grabbed your accent right away, that's South African. I don't even know if that was in your bio, and I probably missed it if I'd read it earlier, but the fact that you're in South Africa, I was just there back in April and May. Is your whole company, Ruby Digital, based in South Africa? Are most of your employees there, or is it just you that's there?
Most of our employees, but we're a multinational. We're registered in South Africa, UK, and we're currently wrapping up our international structure, and then we'll be registering our LLC in the US, but we're already operating out of 2 virtual hubs out of Atlanta and New York.
Interesting. All right. And how many total employees do you have?
So we are 40 full-time,
Okay.
and there is a very deliberate reason for that number, because there's a big part of our staff that's actually part-time, and that just speaks into our growth model.
I'm going to ask you a little bit about that for sure, but I don't see a lot of companies that are South African that are expanding and going global. You hear a lot more about global companies that are moving, or US companies that are moving, going. I'm Canadian, worked with a bunch of different South Africans. What's the lure of going into the US market for you guys? Because I know that's where you're going, versus maybe more European markets, Australian markets, and other markets.
So about 4 years ago, we started looking at, well, what's the next step, or, next evolution of the company. Looking deeper into South Africa and further Africa, we just found there was a bit of a saturation of our market. And then we went into exploring the UK, same saturation that we experienced. And then looking into the US, we kind of realized that the market is pretty much still wide open. And the thing that really unlocked it for us is the realization that what we were offering was unique in terms of a certain standard of quality. So we then soon realized, actually, we can offer equal types of services, but at a better quality, better delivery into the US. And there was a pretty big appetite for that. So, I sometimes say we've managed to develop a delivery engine that plugs into the US and just, turns it into a Ferrari, really. So yeah, the expansion opportunity in the US is just much more, inviting. And then I think there was a part of us, we're 3 co-founders. You operate in South Africa, you do relatively well, and then you just start asking yourself on a personal level, how good are we really? And what better stage to go and test what you're made of, than in the US.
Okay, so you said something, and I kind of listened to it, and I'm curious whether my intuition was correct on this or not. But saying that South Africa was already saturated and much of Europe was already saturated, but then the US wasn't. Is it because of a labor arbitrage opportunity that it's not as saturated? That because you're hiring all these people in South Africa, which is really about a 60% discount to what you have to pay in the US, that you can actually offer very high quality, strong English um, into a market that can pay a little bit more? Is that why it's not as saturated? Because your cost base is so much lower? Or are you just saying that your service and products just don't exist in the US as much?
So So at the foundation, yes, everything you just said.
Okay.
What's giving us a unique opportunity, and I guess what is almost a catalytic factor for us in comparison to other companies trying to do what we're doing, is we legitimately just offer premium service. And something that we've experienced, and there might be a few of the listeners that have a different opinion on it, but in the 3 years that we've been expanding into the US, something that's really stood out for us is that premium offerings are actually very rare to come by.
Mm,
It seems like, especially in the marketing space, it's about specialization or differentiation in terms of what market or industry you're in. And as soon as you've unlocked a very specific niche, it seems like all the companies in that industry gravitate to you being the niche or industry, which be HVAC or financial service or whatever that might be. And and then what we soon realized is that there's actually just a challenge around the quality of the delivery. And a lot of that, we suspect, has to do with it's very hard to retain top talent in the US within US companies,
yeah.
especially in the marketing space where, it's almost like a mercenary mindset. And, the second part is if you can't retain your top people, how can you ensure consistent delivery? And that's actually kind of where we find ourselves in, is that space is becoming a strategic partner for either agencies or other fractional firms looking for a reliable delivery service. And so that's kind of where the analogy of the engine that's plugging into to other vehicles into the US is coming from. So we actually had three growth objectives that we've put in place, one of which being that we've become the strategic partner that just delivers premium instead of like a specialization service.
Okay, so so then my intuition then on the labor arbitrage component was accurate because you're correct. Digital marketing agencies in the United States are losing talent, losing their people every 6 months to 18 months. That's literally how fast they're flipping out. And I know some friends that own some pretty big agencies, some 400 people. A client that I used to coach, actually one of the founding members of the COO Alliance, it's called Tenuity. They've got about 2,400 employees in Tenuity as a digital marketing agency, but they're able to hold on to talent for a little longer because they're one of these best of breed businesses. But yeah, when you're turning them over that quickly, you can't offer any good service to your clients. Your clients are constantly having to train the people and you don't have any good consistency. Is that really where you can offer more then?
Yeah, and I think that's really where our focus has come in. So 40% retention rate in the US on average. That's what
Right.
the stats suggest. Um, on the contrast, we have been able to retain 100% of our senior management for more than 3 years.
Yep.
We have retained more than 95% of our mid to senior staff for more than 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of continuity just allows you to build a culture of excellence,
Those
right?
those are numbers that were consistent in the mid 90s when people were hiring Gen X, right? The baby boomers. They were staying for 5 to 10 years, but that's literally unheard of in digital agencies in the USA. So that makes a lot of sense.
And I
Does
must say, look, that is definitely something that we've been very deliberate in how we designed this model, and I think it's the unique model offering that we have that is, yeah, making it very rewarding for our people to stay on and be committed.
What do you mean about the model? Because I was going to ask you, it can't just be because you can pay them a tiny little bit more. You must be running a really good company. You must have a good company culture as well. Otherwise, people are going to leave.
Yeah, well, we were voted one of the top 20 companies, not agencies, but companies to work for in South Africa by the UK Sunday Times.
Okay.
Uh, and that really comes from a place of, us having built a operating system built on trust. And this operating system is called the Ruby Way. And essentially what it comes down to is that what has changed in the last 2 decades is that the new employee is looking to be an entrepreneur. They've seen their parents commit their entire careers, right, to one job. only to see how the retirement goes. And I think the question that this younger generation is asking is, how is what I'm going to do matter? How am I spending my time? And I think what we've been able to unlock, at least so far, is a employment offering that enables each individual to be an entrepreneur, which is essentially to say, we're a high performance, high growth environment. We're looking for people that wants to grow at the same rate. In other words, come and be an entrepreneur with us, with a lot of a lot of the benefits of being self-employed, with a lot of the lower risks of being self-employed. And essentially, we as the senior management, we're accountable for generating the opportunity for them to keep growing. And then we have a reward program or a career growth program that we refer to as Step Up that we've implemented, which essentially allows any person in the company to see an advancement at least every 6 months.
Okay, so there's so many things I want to just kind of go back and ask about here. I want you to talk about the advancement every 6 months, but I want you to talk about also they want to be entrepreneurs. How are they being entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial inside of the organization? Can you speak to both of those?
Sure. So the way we've built the system is that for every division in the company, we've been very clear in terms of what that function is, the output, desired output. But more so, we've actually been able to tie it to a revenue value that they need to manage within that division. And so we've actually then allocated portions in relevant degree of their seniority and responsibility of that revenue to each individual. So effectively, we're saying if you're doing your job correctly and you're excelling at it, you should be able to maintain this amount of revenue to your portfolio. Well, we refer to it as their portfolio. So your portfolio, you should be managing that amount of revenue. And I think a quick way of just flipping it on its head so that you can maybe see it from a different perspective is what we've done is we have applied the asset management or financial management model to the marketing environment. So, your financial advisor, in a way, they're all, entrepreneurial self-starters, where they are responsible for developing their own portfolio and then looking after that. Yes, they might be part of a larger organization, but ultimately they build their own client book. And so in a way, what we've done is that we have created a model where we can distribute the responsibility of the revenue into different divisions, into different tiers. And essentially with that, we're saying, here's a list of KPIs. These are your lead metrics. If you achieve all of these, your lag metric is that you're actually being a custodian of this amount of portfolio. And if you achieve that, every 6 months, we do a review and you're either on track to reach a adjustment or promotion in 12 months time, or you have the opportunity of actually coming into a bit of a dragon's den environment and convincing us that you've actually not just met, but potentially excelled. And therefore you believe you have the opportunity to bring your reward forward, which then also means that there is an opportunity for you to put the challenge to us to say, I want to earn more. So if I have achieved this, then tell me what my next step looks like so that I can get to that milestone.
I love this. All right. This is very similar to 40 years ago, which is crazy. It was 40 years ago. Was it 40? Hang on, do the math. 30, no, 30 years ago. What was 93? 93 to today. Yeah, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
No, fuck it. It was
31. 93 today is 31.
93 to
It's
today.
32.
32 years ago. So it's 32 years ago, I hired Kimball Musk, Elon's younger brother, to work for me at a company called College Pro Painters. And it was we paid all of these 8,000 painters that worked for us. Kimball was a franchisee. We paid them piece rate. And if they were able to paint faster and paint with good quality, they could make more. You're basically doing that inside of a digital agency. Then you're creating this little entrepreneurial environment, which keeps the retention up, keeps them more motivated. Are there any downsides to it?
I think the highest risk that we have is if you are being given that much rope, the opportunity can quickly come where you hang yourself. So you take on too much than you should, or you burn out. And so to counter that, we've actually developed a scorecard model where we, through being a virtual system and having quite a lot of technology implemented, we can actually track an individual's input. So interestingly enough, we actually have a weekly scorecard program where we measure a person's average hours worked per week. And we have a compulsory KPI in that step up model where it's not allowed to be more than an average of 9.5 hours days. So we're essentially part of their KPI is to say, you must do this within a healthy work-life balance environment. And then we have the entire, balance wheel, you know, a part of it, which I can unpack for you. But the point is we're very strict on making sure that we align on what their personal objectives are. Like, where in the balance wheel of their career or their life is work right now. We have people that subscribe and others that unsubscribe to the model. So it's not, obligatory when you join the company. You can decide what part of your life you're in, what stage you're in, and how important money or advancement is. And so you can switch that on or off as much as you want to. But the key is that once you switched on, there is no point in you being able to reach a milestone only to burn out 3 months after you receive the promotion.
Right.
And so for us, about sustainability is key. So the downside is creating a high performance environment where everybody is so geared towards succeeding that you can feel maybe even a bit embarrassed to put up your hand to say, guys, I've taken on too much or I'm struggling. So to maintain that, we've over the last 2 years in particular, we've put in quite a lot of processes to ensure that we safeguard against that. We actually created our own internal organizational health check, which we call our Ruby Satisfaction Scorecard. And that includes like 13 metrics, which includes, is somebody nominating other people for shout outs? Are people participating in company initiatives? Are people completing surveys? Like just really gauging. We even run a question like, how do you feel on a Sunday night before starting work? Right. So we do all of these regular checks with a very strong leadership team that we've developed to try and safeguard on that burnout side as much as possible.
Yeah, the fact that you care so much about their employees and and I love that you're even using a balance wheel. I actually have 60 COOs filling out a balance wheel next week at an event I'm hosting at MIT for our COO Alliance, where we look at 8 different areas of their life and try to get them to. I say it's like an elephant on a teeter-totter, that you can never be perfectly balanced. You kind of go back and forth a little bit. And one quarter you got to focus on a couple areas, let a couple areas slide, and next focus but you got to keep an eye on all of the 8. The fact that you as a company care about your employees like this, it does speak very well why you can have the premium offering, because you're attracting people, you're keeping people, they care about your customers more. It also sounds like you really care about your employees more than you care about your customers, which then has your employees caring more about your customers. Is that partially true, do you think?
In short, I can answer that by saying we've got an internal mantra, which is grow people, grow global, grow profit, in that order of priority.
Yeah. That consistently lines up. You've given me you've said 3 or 4 different terms, and I'm curious if you guys, you mentioned the catalytic factor or catalytic mechanism. You talked about scorecards and KPIs, the balance wheel. Are you guys a part of Vern Harnish's like scaling up organization, or did you come out of the entrepreneurs organization in some way? Or
So what's interesting about that is I have a CEO and we have a fantastic dynamic. We're really each other's yin yang.
yeah,
We come from he comes from a place of being an EO member, and he has been an active EO member, sits on the board for the Cape Town chapter, actively involved in the East Coast chapters. And he has, when we partnered, the first thing he did was give me the scale up. And I said to him, look, I appreciate this, but I'm probably not going to read it. And that started a whole journey of me being a very stubborn individual, in that my theory is, if you're going to try and do something different, then I like the idea of first trying to do something on my own to determine the original idea and then test it against what has worked, or especially if you're failing, then go and look at the source material available and see where you could have gone right. Now, scaling up EOS, there's 100, if not 1,000 books on how to improve every facet of business, and to the frustration of my CEO, I don't think I've ever read one of them. um, in fact, to be quite honest, this is probably the next book that I'll read, the first book that I'll read in a very long time. And honestly, because I'm really just diving deep into the COO Alliance universe, and I'm just really passionate about what you guys are doing and being part of it. But the point I'm making is that there is a very deep purpose for me in reading your book, to better understand what it is that you've built so that I can better navigate myself in this environment, right? But coming back to your question around, where do we draw from? You spoke about 32 years ago, right? What worked 32 years ago works now because that's a first principle, right? And I'm such a big believer of first principle. So my CEO asked me back in the days, like, so like, what do you build this on? Like, where does the confidence come from or the certainty to make certain decision? I said, well, ultimately we're humans. We're all in the business of communication. And if you want to understand how to best communicate, especially persuasive communication, which is business, then you got to start with the philosophies, the psychologies, and the, sociologies of it all. And that's kind of where my background comes from. That's really where I studied. I studied communication science, and those were all fields or majors that I had. And coming from that, I just asked myself, well, if you're going to be operating in a human environment, how are you going to apply those human rules and guidelines to build a business? And so, I often refer to myself as a human systems engineer, which is where my tools come with the humanities or the human sciences. And having used that to then say, okay, how can this work best in terms of how people work best with each other? So that is the first principle. And then around that, we've built the systems. And then coincidentally, there has been so many overlaps. And so to create a little bit of, let's call it uniformity, or give people a little bit of a better handle on what we're talking about, we would borrow terms from, these, let's call it industry standardized systems. But I would go as far as to say 80 to 90% of the time, if you're going to come and look at what we do under that term, it's not the same thing.
Yeah, which makes sense. The term catalytic mechanism actually came from, I think it was from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. Vern just happens to talk about it. Vern Harnish was the founder of the Entrepreneurs Organization. I know Justin, your CEO, was a member of, as you mentioned, was a member of EO. I think that we may have even crossed paths years ago at Endicott House. Did he ever go to the Entrepreneurial Masters Program, EMP, do you know?
May have been. He's been a very active participant. Look, I mean, he recommended COO Alliance for me, to be quite honest. I mean, he was like, Cameron comes from EO. I back him all the way.
Well, I'm gonna back him on reading the book Scaling Up, and I think anyone listening should read the book too. It's very well done. It's a little more advanced than companies, in the 40, plus freelance needs. But I think it meshes very nicely with the EOS world, with Gino Wickman's book Traction. And I think there's some really good systems and mindsets and tools in there. I'm glad you're reading the book The Second Command. But I think what you also mentioned was really the underpinnings, which is we are all human. And a lot of the lessons that we need to grow business are the lessons that we need to be humans. Right? And then the next book that I'm working on is all the grandmotherisms, I call it. And it's all the sayings that our grandmothers told us about life that are very applicable to business. And I think you guys seem to be doing a really, really good job with that. Can you walk us through what Ruby Digital is? Give us kind of the core products and services as to who you are as a company.
We are a performance marketing company specializing in B2B companies. And in a nutshell, as part of the group, where we also have a web development company called Ruby Web, we're really focused at giving an end-to-end ROI service. In other words, starting from understanding what gets your client to convert online, in other words, what type of website, through to how do we engage with them, build relations, and continue building them to become evangelists. Right. So, and I think that's really where our strength has come in, with why fractional, CMOs or CROs have brought us on as their, strategic partner to come and execute, is because, we've had this many times where clients would come to us after we presented our solution proposal, and they would actually ask us, like, are you guys certain you want to work with us? And we're like, but why do you say that? It's like, well, it really sounds like you're trying to scare us away. And the reason for that is because we're so strict on our expectation management from the outset. We just don't make any commitments in terms of what we guarantee. There's no guarantees, first and foremost. We're in the business of risk management. If we were able to determine exactly how to convert clients, how to manipulate markets, then we would be more effective than, the stock market. So the point is, we're really in the business of risk management. So the better we understand what your client wants to achieve, the better we're able to best apply your money towards converting them into your customers. And there's always risk. So it's just the amount of work that goes into preparing strategy and then accurate execution, that minimizes the risk. So we're risk managers, and in order to be an effective risk manager, you really need to manage your customers' expectation. And for us, we really focus on the long-term relationships, which is why it's B2B. And so, yes, we do offer, let's say, the traditional push strategy marketing, like paid campaigns and so on. But really for us, it's about the organic longevity. So, how's your SEO doing? How's your email? And I'm not talking cold outreach. I'm talking about real account-based marketing, relational email marketing. How's that doing? How are you building return customers or those that become evangelists that refer others to you? And I think that's really where, especially in the times we're heading into, that's where the true success of B2B firms, whether you're accounting, legal, or any other professional services, I think that's where success is going to lie, is true, deeper relationship with your client base.
That makes sense. What's your typical client or your ideal client size?
So for us at the moment, we're looking at anything between 30 million to 100 million. And within that, it really depends on the size of the organization. It's let's say it's relative in terms of what they charge for their services. So really, the organization so much doesn't matter to us. But what I actually want to say to you in terms of that, w- our client base is actually can be anywhere as long as the client is what we refer to as the SMC, sophisticated, mature client. Sophisticated in that they understand that they need an expert to come and help them grow in a certain avenue of their organization. Mature in that they have the operational infrastructure or systems to actually convert the opportunity that we're creating.
Yeah.
And if they have that, then part of the sophistication also comes in the understanding that you must, for the growth of your organization, have a percentage of your revenue dedicated to your marketing budget. And that, you have this idea that owners spend profit and marketers spend budget, right? But you need to have a executive team that buys into the idea that marketing, well applied, is part of the operational system that needs to grow the company. And so that is also a big part of us qualifying the right type of clients. Because if we want to look after our people, we got to bring in the right type of clients.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like your typical client size is probably in the 10 to 100 million size, kind of
Yep.
mid-sized client. Um, you mentioned that, that having a percentage to spend. It's always astounded me how so many companies don't understand the cost of acquisition. They don't understand the lifetime value of the client, and they don't understand the cash conversion cycle of it. Do you have a target percentage or a return on ad spend that they're supposed to be getting? And do you measure return on ad spend as revenue or gross margin return on ad spend?
So I'm going to answer the question by just explaining how we do not go down that avenue at all. We don't touch that metric, because
Okay.
what we do is we first try and understand what the client's business objective is, and within that, why they believe that is even achievable. So often you have clients coming to a marketing agency, and then they're actually looking for the marketing agency to tell them what's happening in their market. A marketing agency is not a management consulting firm or a market research firm where they first understand and go deep dive and understand what are your, your achievable market, right? You Businesses need to have a sales team or a business development individual first understand, is the market size there? Can we actually grow in a specific area? Now, we help clients through various of ways, which I'm not going to unpack now, but we help them get to that answer. And it's only when we know that answer do we actually then develop a roadmap to say, how do we need to invest in which channels to eventually get you there? And part of our expectation management is to say, depending on which avenue, whether it be push marketing or pull marketing, we're going to take either 3 months to just gather data based on this working theory that we've collaboratively developed, or 6 months if it needs to be more organic. And only from there, when we have some baseline and some real KPIs, then we start making commitments to say, okay, based on what we've done, this X amount of investment should get us towards a certain ROI.
Mm. You mentioned earlier that you're a performance marketing agency. But you do all different areas of digital too. Like you mentioned, you do SEO, you do paid search. Do you focus on the affiliate side of things, which is typically performance based, or was that just a term that you're using to kind of
So interesting enough, we originated in the iGaming industry 12 years ago, right? And subsequent to that, we've really just gotten to a place where everything we do is data driven towards actual ROI.
Hmm.
We have clients that will come to us and, globally there is economic challenges and they'll just come to us and they say, well, we just cannot afford marketing anymore. Then we have a very easy conversation to show them in the last 12 months, this is how much actual revenue you've generated from your investment, which then makes a very difficult decision to switch off that revenue if you're trying to, switch off. So in terms of being able to be a true performance marketing company, I think that's what defines it, is how does your actions directly impact the performance of the company? And, in terms of affiliations or so on, we have a lot of referral partners, strategic referral partners, and we've built an ecosystem so much so that, our pursuit into the US and our expansion actually has very little to do with our own organic growth. We're not actively pursuing any clients directly within the US. Yes, wonderful. If the opportunity presents itself, we're always there to offer our services. But working with strategic partners and creating a degree of an affiliate program, that's kind of where we're seeing the most of our success.
When you talked about companies having a dedicated percentage, allocated for marketing, a percentage of ads, or yeah, percentage of their budget for ad spend, what percentage do you typically try to get them to think about? Is it the kind of 8 to 10 legacy number that we've heard about? Is it more? And does that include salaries? Or how do you try to advise them?
Well, the way we take that approach is once we understand that business objective, we've really, which is really well defined based on the data, then we actually develop the plan. We then give them the budget, and then we educate them to say, this is merely X percentage of your budget. And interestingly enough, Cameron, it is companies we have clients that have come to us with anything between 5 and 10, right? So they're in the growth space. But then if you look at what they have been spending, it's been less than 1%.
Right.
Right.
Oh,
And then you try to educate them that they need to be more in the 5%, but to then see that value that they need to invest, it's sometimes actually quite intimidating for them. So what we're trying to do is, instead of setting the expectation of what they should be investing, we rather first determine what value needs to be and how much that is of their revenue percentage. What I can say, when it comes to B2B services, I always work with rule of thumb 5 to 10% if you're looking to grow, and 2.5 to 4% if you're looking to sustain.
okay.
Right. So that's always been a safe ballpark. And in 15 years of being in performance marketing, I'm yet to be proven that that is not a healthy ratio to work with.
So I don't remember when the survey was. I think it was about 30 years ago. And they looked at the top advertising agencies in the United States and they said, what percentage of your revenue do you spend on advertising? And they were all between 1 and 2%. And they were all telling their clients to spend 8 to 10.
Yeah.
Where do you spend your advertising and marketing dollars for Ruby Digital? And I'm not going to ask you your rough percentage just in case.
No, I'm going to be very transparent. We're actually on 15%.
Okay.
And I think a big part that I don't know, to that statistic, I don't know if the caveat was what they spend in actual hard costs or external costs like Google ad spend and so on. But something that, an advertising agency is often in that beneficial position where what is a hard cost to a client is a soft cost because you have the resources and the talent. And so we actually have
Very fair.
built our own in-house marketing team. So we have 3 dedicated people that looks after our marketing. As in other words, their job title in the company is either marketing manager, head of marketing, or marketing coordinator, or marketing analyst. So we have and then we have their dedicated budget, and they run their own budget. And we, as the agency, as the management team, we're actually clients, and we are managed in that way by them. And so that has worked really well. And to be quite honest, we've seen the fruits of our investment. We like to say, and we actually, whenever we present our solutions to clients, and how, companies would always say, this is the clients that we've serviced. Our logo is second next to one of our bigger clients. And we say, well, everything we do for you, we do for ourselves.
Okay.
And we actually back ourselves. I mean, just to give you one stat, we generate for ourselves at least 1,000 organic leads annually. through our own website. So, you can't be championing yourself as a B2B performance SEO company if you can't be doing that for yourself.
Can I ask about that? Just a quick question before we wrap. I'm curious, if a company can generate that many leads, you could likely convert, you know, a huge percentage of those if you wanted to, like even 10 or 15%, which is way more clients than you even need. What do you do with those clients? With those clients that you can't service? Do you farm them out? Do you sell those leads? Do you spin off a division and let one of your entrepreneurial employees spin off a division that they can run to capture them? Or do you just let them go by the wayside and say, I know we had you as a lead, but you can shop somewhere else?
We're very fortunate that we have a revenue line item, which is just referred to as referral revenue, which is where we actually then disqualify and refer clients to an entire library of referral partners based on where we think the best partner would or best service provider would be for them. And yes, we have those high volume of opportunities, but the key to the success of the system is the clean fuel that needs to come in. The better the quality of the client, the better the system runs. And so if we just take it all, yes, we'll be able to probably, and I don't exaggerate, we'll probably be able to double our revenue, but we'll burn our people and we'll probably like destroy our culture. It is because we're bringing in that clean fuel, quality clients that our people are happy to service those clients because they're the right type of clients for the right, for the solutions that we offer. And so our people are really passionate about.
But are you monetizing those leads that you are then selling or sending off to other clients to handle for you? Are you getting a percentage?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, that's what so we have a referral revenue stream that actually is part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, so many companies just miss on that opportunity. We were when we were building 1-800-GOT-JUNK years ago, we contacted a company called Waste Management, and they were saying that around 7 to 10% of their calls were for stuff that they couldn't do, and they were just saying sorry, hanging up the phone. We're like, send them to us. Like, we'll do junk removal. Like, we'll give you 10% of our revenue. And now we do millions of dollars a year of business from stuff that they were just saying sorry, hang up the phone. It just seems silly. All right, I want you to go back to the 21-year-old Ebert and give yourself some advice. What advice would you give to the younger you that you know to be true today?
That would probably be trust is earned, not given. I
Mm.
think a big part of my early decisions in business, I was declared bankrupt at 26 with my first company, and a lot of it comes from a place of just wanting to trust the world, and needed to realize that you actually need to build in systems that people can prove that they're trustworthy, as much as you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Ultimately, you don't have to trust them when you can believe in a system. And I think, and that was one of the hardest lessons I learned through my 20s. And fortunately, I've had a few more years since then, actually a couple of decades to really implement and improve just on that trust model, that trust system.
I love it. Well, Ebert, thank you so much for sharing with us. We have Ebert Grobler, who's the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Ruby Digital based in South Africa. Thanks for sharing with us on the Second in Command podcast. Really appreciate it, and glad you're also part of the COO Alliance.
My pleasure. Thanks, Cameron. And I'll see you next week in Boston, MIT.
I'm excited. It's going to be a great event. We'll see you then. Thank you.